Today you're going to create a color harmony landscape. You can use an analogous, triadic, monochromatic, or complementary color harmony. It's up to you. Just pick one. Today I'm going to do an example using complementary colors for my color harmony. I'm going to choose two colors that are opposite on the color wheel, yellow and violet. First, before I start painting, I have to prepare my canvas. Even though we're not using a canvas, I'm going to call it that. We're going to prepare our paper for watercolors. Smart watercolor artists stretch their paper first, which means you're going to put it on some sort of a board. Now you might not have a board at home, so you can stretch it on a book like I'm doing in this video. You can tape the edge of the paper. Halfway along the edge will go on the paper and halfway along the edge will go on the book. And this will tape it down so that it stays nice and flat. You're going to do that on both the top and the bottom and also on the sides. Try to make it so that you have about equal amounts covering the paper and equal amounts going onto the book or the board. This will also give us a nice white frame when we peel the tape off. Another thing that a lot of people don't know about watercolors is you should practice having some tilt. That means you can prop your board and your paper up onto something so that it's lifted off the table a little bit at an angle. This will allow your watercolors to flow a little bit. The first thing I do for my landscape is just draw a few lines. The first line is going to be the top of the horizon, and then I'll add a couple more lines showing some hills. Don't think too hard about these. Just add some lines from one edge of the paper to the other. Try to make them flow organically. Okay, so now I'm ready to paint. I'm going to do complementary colors. I'm going to start with yellow in my sky, and then I'm going to move on to a purple land. That's how I'm going to show my complements. If you're going to have two colors, you might want to have one in the sky and one in the land. When you do a landscape, you always want to start with the sky and move your way down with those lines that I set up. The sky is always going to be the lightest value, and as you get closer to the land and closer to the foreground, you're going to want to get your values a little bit darker. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of a wash, and I'm going to leave some of these whites completely paper white so that they look like clouds. And I'm going to remember that yellow is not just yellow in the pan. Remember we did this whole grid? You can use this grid to help you think about other yellows or other blues, whatever color you're using. There's not just one kind of yellow. Yellow mixed with other colors actually makes a more interesting yellow. So consider exploring that in your painting. You can see how this is starting to drip because of my tilt. I actually want that to happen. I'm also adding just plain water to my paper and then I'm putting pigment in it. This technique is called wet on wet. You can see how the colors bleed together. It's kind of unexpected, but really fun to play with. Don't get too caught up in things looking real. I really just want you to play around with the paints and think about your color harmony. So now I'm working with the purple. I'm going to fill in this shape with a little bit of a darker value, like I was saying. As I move down in the painting, I start to make my values darker. To make your paint darker, you just stir longer in the pigment. If you want a lighter color, you need to add more water. And again, I'm just going to make a different kind of violet here by mixing red and blue instead of using the violet in the pan. Remember, we want some variety in your colors, not just purple, purple, purple. We want lots of different purples. So I'm going to start with the red. Ooh, I like that. Now I'll add the blue. And again, I'm doing that wet on wet, where I'm dipping wet paint into other wet paint. Sometimes it's better not to scribble too much. Let it drip. Another important part about painting with watercolors is letting things dry and giving it layers. So I'm just going to rework a few little spots in here, and then I'm going to have to stop playing with it, which is the hardest part, and just leave it alone and let it sit for a little while. Half an hour is good. You can go do some other work for another class, then come back when it's dry. Now it's dry, and I can come back to it. You could add another layer of watercolors if you want, but I'm going to have some fun with this and add another layer of chalk pastels. I love drawing on a dry painting with pastel. These are the ones that are chalky, not the oil pastels. They leave a nice dusty print. So I'm going to go into my sky with some yellow and also some reds and whites, and I'm going to fill the sky in with some more color. Then I'm going to move down again in that same sort of pattern of working from the top down. I'm going to add some color to my mountains in the background. I'm going to add some pink, some blue, and some white. And then I blend it with my finger to make it look a little bit smoky. When you look out in the distance, usually the land that's far away looks kind of foggy. And as you get closer, it looks more crisp and clear. So I'm going to make my colors a little more saturated and bright down here. I won't be mixing them with my finger. I want to see the crisp contrast. I'm still thinking about my color harmony. I've got purple in my mind and the yellow in the sky, so I'm using purplish colors. But then I'm going to really make some contrast here by adding that yellow complementary color with some lines that suggest bushes or trees. That also gives us a nice change in value. I'll put some white marks in the front too to create a little more contrast, so I have lots of darks and lights. And the best part of this is when you get to peel the tape off. Don't do this until your painting is completely dry, but I love the feeling of taking the tape off because you get that nice crisp line on the outside. It makes it a really nice framed piece. Here we go. Have fun, make art. Remember, color harmonies: analogous, complementary, monochromatic, or triadic. Pick one and make a landscape.